Imagination is the cornerstone to our creativity as entrepreneurs and really as human beings. Because without the ability to use our imagination and to see beyond the black and the white, we can lose vision, and with that vision, passion for our business or other areas of our lives. So in today's episode, we're going to explore how you can use your imagination to make sure it's showing up for you on a regular basis, consistently, to keep you engaged and on purpose. Hi, my name is Cheri Ruskus, if you have not met me yet. And I am the founder of Business Victories. I am the host of this podcast. I've written a couple of books, and I'm an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur who sees a lot of bright, shiny objects. And where do they come from? They come from our imagination. So in today's show, I really want to have this conversation about imagination because I don't think it's talked about enough. And I don't think that what I do know, let me put it this way, is that so many people believe, I hear it over and over and over again, I'm just not creative. I'm not a creative person. Well, as I recently shared in our book chat about The Artist's Way, and I'll talk more about that here in a few, is that, we all have the ability within the human psyche to use our imagination. And one of the things that I did way back many moons, I'll just say many moons ago, when I created the Victory Circles mastermind group, and we had met a couple of times, and it was really cool coming together with these women. This was like, almost 17 years ago. And we came together, and it was cool. It was awesome. And I loved, and we cried, and we laughed, and it was just great to be with other women entrepreneurs to really share your struggles and not be in a typical networking group where you had to be so perfect and, my business is great and I'm great and, not having real conversations. But what I realized quickly is that that was good and fine, but we needed some kind of curriculum to keep us moving forward. So what I did is that I created one. And I am a believer that we should use our imagination to do things, but you also don't have to completely reinvent the wheel. So I was really drawn to Napoleon Hill's Law of Success. I have the book right here, so those of you who are watching me on YouTube, you can see this. It's a beefy book. It's falling apart because I have used it so much over the years in really working through the principles that I created for the Victory Circles, which have really become the principles that I have for my business philosophies, using some of his ideas from back in the day. And, he wrote this back in at the beginning part of the century, of the last century, that is. And so many of the ideas come true today. And I took 11, he had 17 principles. I took 11 of his principles and then I kept one that he didn't have in there, and that was honoring time. And so every month I've been talking about these all these years, and it's amazing how I continue to learn every time I dive into a different principle. And this month's principle is imagination. And here's what Napoleon has to say in the Law of Success about it. He said, imagination is the workshop of the human mind, wherein old ideas and established facts may be reassembled into new combinations and put to new uses. And he goes on to share the Webster's Dictionary definition for imagination, which at that time was, and it may still be, I haven't really looked at that, an act or process of forming a conscious idea or mental image of something never before wholly perceived in reality by the imaginer, as through a synthesis of remembered elements of previous sensory experience or ideas, creative ability, and resources. So today we are going to talk about imagination, and I want you to open up your imagination to your own self and where the role that it plays for you currently in your life. And maybe it's just absolutely fine and you're on board and your imagination is working as it should. Or maybe, we tend to get dulled when we find ourselves in front of a lot of screen time, where we're just kind of becoming almost in a vegetable state because we're just, scrolling through social media. We're not really contributing to social media. We're just scrolling through it and not coming up with new ideas. Because the one thing I do like about social media is that it does help, is if you're acting as a creator on it, is you're creating new things and you're creating ideas and thoughts. And so this is just something to trigger you and see where you're at. All right. So the very first thing that you need when looking at your imagination is courage, because creativity, it requires a whole heck of a lot, right? There's a security level in just staying the same and not doing something creative or using your imagination to go out and do something. I am an avid gardener, and so I have to have courage when I go out there and spend money on new plants that I'm going to be able to bring them to life. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. It's just the way it is. But you see past the potential failure and the naysayers, and worst of all, your own inner naysayer, your inner critic, who's like, why are you doing that? Just do it as you've always done it. Don't try anything new. Just go for it. I mean, it's why a lot of people always think about starting a new business, but never actually do it, because it sounds great until that inner critic is like, don't do it. Just don't do it. So there's that piece. So it takes courage to step forward and use your imagination. Whether you're doing an art project or you're starting a new business or you're gardening or whatever it is, there's so many elements. Getting out on the dance floor is being creative, right? And trying a new dance. So you got to have the courage to just see past that you might screw up. You might fail at it the first couple times around, because nobody does it perfectly the first time. The second is your inner child. And for those of you, again, watching on YouTube, I keep a picture of myself as a little girl right here on my desk. And actually in my she shed out, I have another picture of myself as a little girl, because I'm always reminding myself about her and that little Cheri, who my mom used to call me Dashy Lynn. Like the fire, I was so fiery as a little girl, because my imagination was on the go, as most of us were. And then as life happens, right, it just starts to crush us down a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, to the point sometimes where we're just not, we're again, in that security piece. So I really encourage you, and I want to talk just for a few minutes about your inner child and what is it, and I'm going to ask you some questions. Again, pulling from some of the materials from the victory circles, that when we would dive into this and really explore our inner child. Thinking about when you were little, how did you love to spend your time? What was it like? When you think of childhood, what comes up for you? Maybe what was your favorite game to play? We used to play hide and seek all the time. It was a ton of fun. So many different things, right? Who are the friends who brought you the most joy? That special friend from childhood. I'm lucky enough that we just had a call last night, as a matter of fact, a Zoom call. I'm lucky enough to have my childhood girlfriends that we still keep in touch today. But who were the ones that really sparked something in you? What was your favorite story? Like, what was a story you loved to hear, and who was your favorite storyteller? Do you remember like a grandparent or one of your parents, or someone who would tell stories and you would just be mystified? My mother used to, which I have the book today, would tell the story of Nip and Tuck, these little fairies, and it really made me become a fairy lover, actually. And I can remember the sound of her voice. And one of the coolest things is that when I was pregnant with my daughter, my mom came out to visit, and I was I was ready. When you're ready to have a baby, you're ready. You've been at it for 9 months and you're ready for that child to come out. And I will never forget my mother. She said, honey, just close your eyes and let me read you a story. So she read me Nip and Tuck, and just hearing it in her voice was amazing. And I will share with you another piece of the story is that when my mother, years later, my mother was dying, sadly, of ovarian cancer. And she had given me the book at that point in time when I had my daughter. She had read it to me and she gave me the book. And so I had brought it to me. I had gone out to California to be with my mom, and I was staying every night with her in the hospital. I got to the point I just wasn't going to leave her. And so one night she said to me, would you read me Nip and Tuck? And I tell you, that was one of the hardest moments in my life, was to be able to read that to her without just bawling my eyes out. Because here I was reading to her, and I will never forget her laying there in the bed, just the glow of the light over her bed. And I finished reading it. And you know what my mom said to me? She said, I am the luckiest woman in the world. And here was my mom. She was dying. And she knew she had very little time left on the earth, but she just talked about how lucky she was. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent on that, but I think it's important that we remember that all these, even as an adult, right, from a childhood to adult, the things that are in our mind, in our conscious and unconscious mind, and how important it is to remember. That's why stories are so great to remember. All right, I go on. What was your favorite color? My favorite color was green, and you know what? It still is. I love green. Maybe that's why I love gardening so much. What was yours? And is it still the same today? What were your favorite foods that you used to love to eat? What was your favorite thing to wear? If you, did you have a special dress or shirt or something that you just loved wearing? Maybe it was a costume that you got to put on. Who were the family members that got you? That really tapped into you, that got you? My grandmother, she was one who got me. We would sit on the back porch for hours and hours just talking, or, on the phone. She lived down the street from us once she moved down the street from us, we would see each other a lot more than on the phone. How did you find yourself letting your imagination to come out to play then? What happened? I can remember starting the Paco fan club when I was a young girl with my boyfriend, Tony Puntar, down the street. It was his little chihuahua, so we started the club, and I said I would only do it if I was president. And he agreed, because he still wanted to be my boyfriend. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are the fond memories, the things that come up for you, that when you think about your imagination and your time as a child? Don't let your child go, and keep a picture of you as a child, because you know what? He or she is still inside of you right now today. And the more we honor that child in us, the happier I believe that we'll be. Let go of preconceived beliefs that you have about creativity. So I did a book review, which we're calling our book chat, over on YouTube. And I'll put a link below. If you go to Business Victories on YouTube, you will find our YouTube channel. And we're going to be doing book reviews over there on a regular basis. And Julia Cameron suggests, in one of the many exercises in the book, to write a letter to yourself, or to write a creative prayer. And I highly recommend you do that. And I thought I was going to have my creative prayer here, and I don't think I do. Hold on one second. What would I have done with that? If I had that, hold on. All right, I don't find it here. So, you know what? It's in her book. Hold on. No. Here it is. Hold on. Okay. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? And this is live, so I've got to let this be live, but gosh darn it, it's not in the book. Okay, well, there you have it. I will not be sharing that with you today. Another day I will share it, but it's a creative prayer, and it's really about just, honoring who your creative spirit is inside of you, and doing that. So, a creative prayer. And again, I highly recommend the book, The Artist's Way. If you haven't read it, I have done, it's a 12-week program. I've done it many times over the years. I've done it solo. I've done it in a group of people. I just did it again last summer. It's a great little activity if you're feeling stuck, or even just to get that muscle. It's all about the creative muscle, getting it going. So I highly encourage, after this podcast, to go listen to that over on YouTube. All right, sorry for the not being able to find my creative prayer, but I love doing it, and I keep it actually up here. Actually, I have it up here. Hold on, just a minute. I have it up on the wall up here, so I could use this copy of it to read it to you. All right, so here's my artist's prayer. Dear Great Spirit, please allow me to hold my creativity close to my soul, to gather the strength to control what I can control, to allow me to find the courage to create when fear comes my way, to open my heart and create every day. When the ups and downs of life start to fill my head with thoughts of doubt, let me remember it's my creativity trying to get out. May love always surround me when I create. Never let me get caught up in jealousy or hate. You may have noticed this is turning into a poem because I created a poem out of it when I was writing it because my imagination took over. Love, of course, must start in my own heart. Loving myself first is where I will start. With my heart wide open and my eyes as well, may good thoughts of creative comfort be in the home that I dwell. Keep me close to your energy and might, doing what I know in my heart, body, and spirit is right. Have me be clear on who blocks my way, and help me to move towards positive energy when I stray. Deep breaths in the morning, deep sleep at night. Thank you, kind and creative spirit, for holding me tight. Your love is what soothes me and helps me to see that everything I need is right inside of me. And again, I keep that here in my office just to look at it at times, right? We all go a little crazy in our business, in our life, because stuff is swirling around us, and it's just a time to stop, like any kind of good prayer does. It just gets us a time to stop and reflect. Another aspect I wanted to talk about today is forgiveness and acceptance. We have to forgive ourselves. Maybe we haven't been using our creativity as we should, or maybe we did something and we totally failed on it. So how do you change that? By forgiving yourself first, accepting it. Napoleon Hill actually called it, profiting from failure, that we got to fail a few times. Some of the greatest creative work ever came out of failures that, you thought one way it was going to happen, and then lo and behold, it's going to be a totally different way that it comes together. I can't even tell you how many times in my business life that has come to be true. It's to let go of the woulda, shoulda, couldas, right? Because they just slap us in the face. So let go of the coulda, woulda, shouldas. I think it's the best way to say that. The next piece is curiosity. We've got to be curious. We've got to know. And the name of this podcast is The Bright and Shiny Object. And as I've said many times since we renamed this podcast from the Business Victories podcast to the Bright Shiny Object Project podcast, is that it's okay to have bright and shiny objects. It's one of the things that makes me crazy about people that talk about bright shiny objects like they're terrible things. They're only terrible things if you don't manage them. If you have so many bright shiny objects coming at you that you can't get anything done. And as someone who again has been diagnosed with ADHD, as many of us seem to be continuing to do these days, something I knew that I had all along, but it's I need to manage it. I know when I'm what I call spinning, and I need to write ideas down, because if you don't use them, you'll lose them so many times. And so but you want to be curious, and sometimes that curiosity can get you going down the wrong rabbit holes. And that's when you know, hey, you know what, that is a great idea, but I got to finish this idea over here first, or let this idea go completely, but not kind of get it halfway done, halfway done, halfway done, halfway done. All the ideas that you've got going on, because that's what gets you in trouble as an entrepreneur and a business person, and anybody who wants to get anything accomplished in their life. It's really seeing something through to fruition, but being curious about, whatever it is. If it's this bracelet, that I'm curious, why did they make this green? And why is there's this little tab? Again, for those of you watching me on YouTube, you can see this, but there's so many things, which I don't know if that's a good example, but it's curiosity. Curiosity is what keeps my creativity going, not only in my business, but in my garden and in so many areas of my life, because I'm curious. Like, if I plant this seed, what will grow from that? What will grow? The next piece is to trust. Trust the ideas that are driven by your inner genius. We all have an inner genius. And if anybody told you along the way that you didn't, they didn't really know you. We do have it. And the bad ideas, there are bad ideas. I don't know if there's bad ideas. I think that's up for debate. But they're bad ideas if it's not working for you and you don't let it go. You gotta let it go sometimes. It just, you can just keep trying to make something work and it's not working. And sometimes I like to think of it as putting it on the back burner, because you know what? It's just not working right now. And maybe there's an element that might come to life that I would like to use, and so that I'll use that at another time. And but trust that, you know what? This idea isn't working. I don't think it's dead yet, but I'm going to move it out of my my sight line so that I can focus on something else that especially if we're trying to make revenue. Oh boy, we got to make the revenue. So really keep that in mind. All right. I was just looking over my notes here of what I wanted to talk about. And really get excited about having things like creative dates or places that put you in the zone. This is my office, and it's colorful. You should see it from on the other side of the room for what you can't see right here. But I like to have things around me that spark me, that get me going. I could tell you all the things that are here, but it's too much. We don't have that kind of time. But it's my happy place to create. But I love the fact that I could take my laptop and go out this time of year and go into the garden, or go somewhere else that I feel creative, move around the house, or, whatever, to be creative and to do that. So that is a really important thing with doing that. I also hugely believe, and I would encourage you, and I'll put a link below in the show notes, or you can go to businessvictories.com/good morning and do our 21-day challenge, morning momentum challenge, the 21-day morning momentum challenge. Can I say that? And it's all about how you start your day. Right? So it's that foundational piece of, because if you're getting up in the morning and just jamming into your day, jam, go, throw some coffee and do this, do that, it's not going to serve you. And I have done a podcast here on More Morning Momentum, but we just slashed the price of it. It's like $21 now. It's $1 a day. I highly recommend it just to readjust yourself in the morning, because let me tell you, when you have that foundational piece of a strong, like you've tapped into your mind first thing of the day, and it doesn't mean perfect meditation, because people get freaked out. And it wasn't until somebody said to me along the way, you don't have to have perfect meditation to quiet your mind in the morning, that I discovered, wow, I really don't. Some mornings I meditate, some mornings my brain is just moving too fast. I can't do it. But I do other things like journaling or listening to music. It's a variety of things. It's in the challenge. Check it out. I highly encourage you to do that. There's this whole thing around the art of innovation. And within a business, getting back to the business piece of imagination, if we're not growing and innovating in our business, we're just staying the same. And I recently, I've had a very successful coaching practice, and it's been a blessing in my life very much. But I realized about a year ago, my husband decided he was going to retire. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready to retire. But I was like, but I've been doing this pretty much the same way for how many years now? I mean, I did, like I said, the victory circles for, it was almost 17 years ago that I started it. And so last year I'm like, you know what, maybe I put the victory circles on hold. Maybe I need to let something else come out of me. And so I've been starting to do new things. I'm starting to create more over on YouTube. I'm starting to play with things that I haven't played with before. I'm fascinated by video, and just what can I do to make things happen? What can I do to innovate and help entrepreneurs in maybe a new way or a different way? And really, when we allow our ideas to grow and shift and change and generate, things start to look a lot different. You think about even things like depression. You can get into a depression, and it's because things have been the same for so long and you haven't innovated. You're bored, and nothing is worse than getting bored in your own business, because you can't just quit. Well, you can, but most of the time there's financial repercussions. Yeah, that's the word, for doing that. So you don't want to do that. So what can you do to innovate? Because I didn't want to, I've had this business for 23 years. I didn't want to just go, forget it, I'll do another business. At this point in my life, I don't want to do that, but I do want to shift and change and see what I can do to innovate what I'm currently doing right now with the technology around me and all the things that there are. The next piece is around consistency. There's a book out there, very old book from a gentleman by the name of Rollo May. He wrote The Courage to Create. And one of the most fascinating things that I found in that book is around consistency. And what he said, he was a psychologist, I believe he was. I don't think he was a psychotherapist. I think he was a psychologist. And he talked about how consistency leads to flow. And so as he talked about it, the inwardly, which is your unconscious part of your mind, and the outwardly, which is the conscious, when they can come together, they create a dynamic fusion, and which results in a heightened state of awareness. And this is why when you're really in a creative mode and you get yourself into a creative state, it's like writing. I love to write, and many years ago, and I talk about this in the book chat, that when I was stuck, I wanted to write, but every time I picked up a piece of paper to write, I couldn't put anything on it, because I couldn't get that flow going. And what I discovered through teachers, doing the artist's way, opening myself up to my own creativity and doing it consistently, is that creative flow started to happen. So that all of a sudden there were words coming down on the paper that I didn't even know where the heck they came from. There's times in the garden when I'm out there and just these flowers come together, or the combination of this bed and that bed. It's like breathtaking. And I'm like, I created that? Like that, I kind of had that vision, but it wasn't. But it's really thinking about it as that heightened state of awareness and consciousness and unconsciousness comes together and creates this dynamic fusion. So this is really a thing. It's a thing. So, but if you only every once in a while go do something creative, that's why in the Artist's Way, the 12-week program, she talks about doing it, having a creative date at least once a week. That's why I write the victory letter. And if you're not subscribed, you can do that over at businessvictories.com. And that's why I write it once a week. And I've been doing it all these years because it's that consistency. I know no matter what goes on in my life, once a week, I'm going to have that writing date with myself. And it makes all the difference in the world. It keeps my creative writer self alive and well, no matter what goes on during the week. And then be a little crazy, okay? Create for you and forget about those who might judge you, because there's been many a time I've hit the send button. There's many, when I wrote my 2 books, excuse me, when I wrote my 2 books, like it was like, oh my God, will anybody buy it? Will this happen? But I love what Elizabeth Gilbert shared in the book Big Magic, which I highly also recommend, about moving. It was between her and the Artist's Way I was going to do for the book chat this month, and I went with the Artist's Way because it's such a classic. Sorry, Liz. But she said, what Elizabeth Gilbert said is that people's judgments about who you are none of your business. I love that. Let's say that one more time. People's judgments about you are none of your business. Forget about it. It's their deal. It's not yours. And I think if we could let even that one single piece go, we'd be so much farther ahead. I don't remember where this came from, but this saying, and this is where I think I'll begin to wrap it up, is that everyone must row with the oars they have until they imagine and create new ones. I love that. So we've got these oars, we're using them, but let's figure out how to create new oars. Let's figure out what to do about that. And it's okay, because if we imagine it, it will happen. Creativity, again, as an entrepreneur, is the greatest tool that we have as a human being. I go back and forth between entrepreneur and life, but as an entrepreneur, I don't know, this is the way I feel about it anyway, having been an entrepreneur most of my adult life, is that it's like breathing. It's like my life and my entrepreneurial life are all connected as one. And we have to find the sparks that make us smile. To me, that's the pure joy of life. That's the gift that we get to be as human beings. There's been all this talk going on about AI. I mean, I had a conversation with somebody the other day that was so freaked out about AI. It was starting to freak me out a little bit. But I choose not to worry about that. I think that what AI doesn't have that the human brain has is imagination, and not kind of a pre-programmed. I don't know all the nitty-gritty, and I could be totally wrong about that piece of AI, but I just have faith in the human psyche and what we have to offer the planet as a whole. All right, so that's what we're talking about today on imagination. Next time on the podcast, we're going to have sales coach Liz Windling on the show. And oh my gosh, she's been on the podcast many times before. And we're going to talk about, Liz is a sales coach, an excellent sales coach, might I say. And we're going to talk about how to imagine yourself as a salesperson. Think about it. So many people who run businesses say, I'm not a salesperson. I hate sales. I want to stay away from sales, marketing, sales. But we got to do it. It's like, as a CEO of a company, you have to sell. You have to sell your employees. You got to be selling on a regular basis. And so it's a pretty tall order for many entrepreneurs when you've had so many bad role models. And that's usually what freaks people out is, oh my gosh, I don't want to sound like that guy that tried to sell me that whatever. We think of it as the used car salesman, right? So you're going to love what Liz adds to the sales equation and the role that our imagination can play in all of that. So that is it for this podcast. Until then, get out there and put your imagination to work. I have no doubt that you can do it. Take good care.